On this episode of AVWeek, we talk about mergers and acquisitions in the AV industry, whether or not they will speed up or slow down throughout the year and what that means for the industry. IBM's Watson is getting more and more involved in the world of AV, and the InfoComm Show registration is open. What to expect this year in Orlando. All that and more. Next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
AV Week is brought to you by our fine group of underwriters, companies like FSR, and by Vadio. This is AV Week, episode 287, recorded Friday, February 24th, 2017. Refreshing AV.
Ready.
AV Week.
Performing scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AV Week. AV Week. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to talk about that very thing, the news and information of the audiovisual industry. First and foremost, buddy and pal and the guy that tells me what to do a lot of times when it comes to business. His name is Brock McGinnis. He is from Westbury National. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, Tim. Nice to be here.
Absolutely. Brock is also a newly inducted member into the Hall of Fame from SCN. So congratulations, sir. I don't think I've had you on since then.
I'll put a frame around.
Never mind. He's obviously not physically in a hall, but I'm sure they have a bust of him somewhere. Also with us is Phil Cordell, my buddy from Nashville, Tennessee. How are you, sir?
Hey, Tim. Great to be here, man. Doing well, thank you.
All right. And last but not least, the host with the most, at least he will be the host for us other three gentlemen. His name is Brad Grimes. He is from InfoComm, and he will be hosting us for the InfoComm Show here coming up in June. How are you, sir?
Thanks. It's BYOB, by the way. So
I have coffee, BYOC. Okay.
No, we're looking forward to having everybody,
Water.
Water.
Actually, hang on real quickly. It's not BYOB. And you know why?
No, I know.
Because y'all got a beer garden this year.
We do. And it's an indoor one.
And Brad, is that why
we
need to register early so that we can get tickets to the beer garden?
Get in line now.
All right, let's kick this off, and we were giving Brett a hard time beforehand. Registration is actually already open for InfoComm. Not for nothing, it opened up during ISC, so not too shabby. Go from one show to another. So, all right, let's talk about some stuff here real quickly. This stuff comes to us from our buddies over at AV Network. IBM and Ricoh are launching the very first ever Watson-powered interactive whiteboards. This comes on the heels of a couple other interesting whiteboards, most notably Cisco's. Yes, it's cool and it's interesting the fact that it's a whiteboard. I'm not really excited about whiteboards in general. I'll just be really honest, guys. I still haven't seen the Surface Hub take off like it probably should have by now. But what I really want to focus on here is the Watson integration. If you're not familiar with what Watson is the fancy schmancy computer that IBM built however many years ago now. It's been on Jeopardy. It's beaten world-class chess champions. And now two different AV companies, manufacturers, are using it for control and for interaction. One is Ricoh. The other one we talked to at ISE, and that's Harman. The Harman integration, they're using it for their version, their flavor of voice control. Brock, I'm going to start with you. The fact that, what does this say about our industry, and maybe more so about Watson, the fact that two different companies now are going to Watson and going to IBM as opposed to going to the more consumer-driven voice control?
I'm the wrong person to ask here, Tim. my initial reaction to both Watson announcements were that they were marketing driven rather than need driven.
Okay.
I certainly don't have customers lining up at my door asking for voice control in the boardroom, because there might be 200-300 different people coming through the boardroom in the course of a given week. And the Watson-driven whiteboard, my reaction was, just because you can do something, does it mean you should?
No, and I would agree with that. That's the thing is, and whiteboard as a segment has not been exciting in a couple of years, and that's me giving them a couple of years. So, all right, Phil, your 2 cents on voice control or the Watson thing.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Brock that I'm not. I haven't had a lot of requests specifically for voice control, but I will say, with the number of times that I or other participants in meetings maybe check our phone to just do a quick Google search or something, it might be nice to be able to bring that up, just right in the throes of the meeting and just say, hey, Watson, what's the deal here, or what's the distance between these 2 cities if we're looking to line a job up or something like that. There are some corners that could. Very impressive, as you mentioned, with the chess thing and with the Jeopardy. I mean, that's the kind of person I'd want to hang out with. I think it beat Kobayashi in a hot dog eating contest. Very impressive.
It didn't do that yet.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
That was a dream I had. All right.
That was a dream.
Yeah.
It's the only dream I want to hear from you. All right, okay. Mr. Grimes, from your standpoint, what are you thinking?
Well, for me, it's less about Watson and it's less about whiteboards per se, and more that it's about this big data and artificial intelligence and analytics thing. Yeah, we're not seeing a lot of demand for this type of integration yet, but what things like Alexa or Watson or any of these cloud-based big data analytics applications have proven is that it is a viable way of making technology solutions more intelligent. So whether it's voice control or whether it's going into a collaboration space and being recognized and the space setting itself up, that's going to be done really effectively in a data center far away from where the installation is. I don't know how Alexa does it. I've got her in my kitchen. She knows stuff and has learned stuff over time. That intelligence couldn't have happened locally. It had to happen back somewhere where there's some serious processing going on. And short term, I don't see a ton of people calling up guys like Brock and Phil asking for this stuff. But over time, I think there's a lot of potential here.
And I wrote a blog piece about 6 months ago, right after Amazon was at the CEDIA show. And I said something similar, Brad. I gave it a year for folks like Control4 and Crestron and others to have this integrated into the home, and for that to translate into folks asking Brock for that very thing. Hey, I can. It goes back to the, hey, I can do this at my house. Why can't I do it in the boardroom? It may not be as much as wireless video. It may not be as much as when they started pushing for HD content in the boardroom and things of that nature. But I still see a use case for it, and I still see a demand being driven, again, back from the home into the boardroom.
Yeah. I sure hope not.
Well, seriously, Brock, I mean, go back 10 years.
Yes.
10 years ago, you were still running 4:3 video over VGA, 2007. So yeah, but you were starting to translate
5-wire.
into it. Yeah, 5-wire.
5-wire.
And things like the Apple TV came along, and suddenly you could seamlessly do HD video from a tablet and eventually from the Mac to somebody's TV. And that translated into somebody saying, hey, I can do this in my house. Why is it so hard to do it in the boardroom? Or just saying, I can do this in my house. I want to do this in the boardroom. Is that not how that happened, Brock, or is it some other way?
I would agree with that, Tim. There is consumer practice is in fact driving changes in the AV industry. People want things real simple. They want to use familiar interfaces. Yep. They want to use familiar devices. I get that. Voice is a whole different thing. And I'm not entirely convinced that voice even has a place in the home. Now, I haven't had a chance to play with Alexa, Brad, because Alexa doesn't speak Canadian. Unfortunately. But, the most brilliant thing that I've seen on that topic is what Brad Coxon wrote. Mark Coxon, rather, wrote AV Phenom when he had people talking to their remotes. How tough is it to get Alexa or to make the things happen that you're having Alexa do for you? Do you really need voice control?
Well, it's funny you bring up talking to your remote because some message board I'm on somewhere, I want to say there's a Comcast remote now that you can talk into your remote and have it do things.
Sure.
And this particular post was asking how you integrate that into
turn on the TV. Turn on the TV. The TV. Turn it on. Oh wait, hang on.
I'll vouch for the Xfinity X1, for instance, and I've been a huge not fan of Comcast for a very long time, frankly. And was always, as soon as I get the opportunity to jump ship to Google Fiber or something like that, then I'll take that. And the Xfinity X1 platform actually has been pretty sweet because as opposed to, going into my menu, going into on demand, looking for Westworld, I just say Westworld and it pops up with all the options. So it is kind of cool. Well, yeah.
And the big data, the connection with Watson and the big data is, yes, it doesn't always work well, first of all. My question was always, is it going to recognize my voice? Am I going to have to say, turn it on, turn it on, turn it on, turn it on 10 times before it turns it on? What happens and what my experience has been is somewhere, again, back in a huge data center where a really smart computer is working and it's listened to me over and over and over again, giving it commands, it learns it. And I don't have to say turn it on 5 times. Eventually, turn it on becomes turn it on, and this stuff becomes better. I don't know that it's going to be perfect, and I don't know that voice control is the only application. But 3 to 5 years ago, I couldn't have figured out how big data had anything to do with a lot of what we consider AV. And now I can start to see it. I mean, there's some processing and intelligence that can go on in these cloud-based data centers that really smart and creative AV people are going to plug into and come up with applications that maybe short term aren't going to make a ton of sense, but medium, longer term will.
And it all started with Siri.
Absolutely.
All of this started with Siri, just like the Apple TV brought wireless presentation to the mainstream. So in the 5 years or 6 years or however long Siri has been out of the closet, has the world truly changed? Does everybody who has an iPhone use Siri?
No. I mean, to be honest, I don't have the data in front of me, but I would actually say no, not 100. They don't have 100% adoption, but they do it does some really cool things, and I might get in trouble for saying this, but I honestly think it's a generational thing. I think it may very well be the older you skew, the less likely you are to use this. I'm using my dad as an example. My dad has had an iPhone actually longer than I have. But I'm not going to say it scares him, but he's a 60 some odd year old man, but he's not comfortable talking to a computer, talking to his devices.
Right.
Whereas I grew up watching freaking Star Trek, where the entire thing was a computer, right? You talked with the computer, and I've been looking for that ever since I was 10 or so. Just this morning I was reading on Gizmodo. If you talk to Siri and you say, hey computer, there's a little Easter egg now. It's a tie-in to the Batman Lego movie, and if you say hey computer instead of hey Siri, it will respond to you like your Lego Batman. It's stupid. It's kitschy. But, oh, my God, I'm a 5-year-old kid all of a sudden because it's talking to me like it's the Batman computer. So, all right, let's move on. Right. Before I bring out Siri and show you guys. All right. Our buddies over at Draper. Full disclosure, Draper is actually one of our fine underwriters. But I thought it was a cool article nonetheless. It was about future-proofing or future-ready. And I want to read a line from this. Future-proof is a term marketers love to use. Although we see it used in the AV market, it's a term that crops up in almost every market and product category. When used to describe a product, the manufacturer is saying that the product is unlikely to become obsolete. Within the context of constantly evolving industries such as AV, that sounds like a bit of a stretch. I happen to agree with that. It is a bit of a stretch. Not for nothing, and like all articles that I'll give my fine guests, this will, tick off a subject in my head. Phil, I'm going to start with you on this. Regardless of the marketing speak, regardless of anything else, your customers are coming to you saying this system has to have a half-life of X. This has to last me so many years. It has to be future-proof for so many years. In education, back when I was a tech manager, because I worked for a small community college and we didn't have a whole lot of money, our half-life was 9 years, right? We expected an investment to last us between 8 and 9 years. I would argue that at this point in the game, that's a little unreasonable because of the speed of technology. When you're working with your clients and they say, Phil, I got to have this is going to last me X years. How do you future-proof, or how do you make sure that system is going to be viable and technologically at least on par for however many years?
Well, again, you really can't guarantee anything, and I think that's the point. And I really appreciated the crux of the article as well, because that term is just a little loaded, and it's a little conflated to think that we're going to have, we know what the future will bring exactly. And even things that we were afraid the future would bring, such as the analog sunset, which is a real thing, but which still has not completely set yet our industry. Even the things that we're afraid of in the future still haven't quite come true. And so, I steer every customer towards the best that our industry can provide right now, the best that the industry, that any industry can provide right now. And I would say I'm thankful for the fact that we all have these, tiny supercomputers in our pockets, because it's easy to say, look, how often do you swap phones out? That's how quickly technology is evolving, and so to think that in the boardroom, you'll be using the same composite video cable to plug in your whatever, has not been realistic. But with that said, I think we've got some great solutions to offer. Obviously wireless, and which I'm not even a huge fan of, but that is extremely being adopted. There's a lot of obvious things that we can point to and say, see, this is kind of what the future looks like, and this is the direction that we'll build your system in. But I really did appreciate that idea of it's future ready. Whatever the future brings, you may need and adapt for it. But I'm pretty sure we can ingest those signals. And so I think that's a valid way to position that. And 5 years, is that, I don't know. I feel like we typically suggest EOL, swap outs at every 5 years or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Grimes, you've been around the industry a long time, both from a industry association standpoint, and before that, you covered it. The term future proof. How do you? Let me just ask it point blank. How do you feel about the term future proof?
Well, I don't take it really literally. I know you could take it literally and then sit and laugh at it for the rest of the afternoon, but I child-proofed my house when my kids were born, or my kitchen. Doesn't mean I left them in the middle of the kitchen floor and walked off because I suddenly child-proofed the things. It's not a literal construct necessarily, but the spirit is where I think the AV industry will go, and is where I covered the IT industry before I covered AV, and they went through the same thing. And what it meant for information technology was a lot of software. It became a very software-driven industry. And that's something that could possibly happen in AV. We do hear people talking about it. We do see AV software divorced from the hardware. We've been an industry of little boxes that did discrete, interesting, important things for an AV solution. But future-proofing, boxes, is more difficult. You got to swap those out from time to time. But if you divorce the software from the box and you can run it on, any kind of Dell server or anything like that, then it's a lot easier to upgrade when new capabilities come out. I think we agree that this industry's moving a lot faster than it did 10 years ago. Great new capabilities coming out all the time. So there need to be new ways of doing what we're talking about here, which is increasing the longevity of solutions, or at least making it easy for enterprises to adjust to the latest capabilities without, forklift upgrades all the time.
All right, Brock. Brad brought up a very interesting point, and the fact that a lot of the hardware capabilities over the last 10, 15 years are moving to a more software-driven model. Is that going to help us at least future-proof, not future-proof, but future-ready our systems?
We're not future-proofing beyond the end of the warranty period, Tim. It's
okay.
Like Phil said, it's how often do you replace your phone? How often do you replace your laptop? Why? Why do you replace those devices? You replace them because the software that runs on them, that has all the coolest new features, no longer runs very well. An iPhone 4 is still a very valid device, works just great until you try and put iOS 10 on it, and then it doesn't work at all. And so it is software that is driving hardware changes. One of the things that we know for sure is that we are going to, that technology is going to change, and that the pace of change is going to continuously become more rapid. So in the AV business, we got two parts. We have edge devices and we have the infrastructure that goes in between them. What is happening with this software-driven change world that we're living in is that we have become much more aware of being standards-based in our approaches to both the edge devices and the infrastructure. We are moving away from proprietary and towards standard-based. If you would have told me 3 years ago that Crestron DM was going to be HD base T compliant, I would have laughed, and then I would have used a profane term of some sort or another, and then put money on the table. Crestron had to make that change because the entire rest of the industry, and it's not standards-based like the IT world standard, but we're moving to AV over IP. We are moving to have infrastructure that is going to carry a 4K signal or an 8K signal, or 18 gigabits per second or 150 gigabits per second, because we know that it's going to change. And I have this conversation every day with clients who 6 and 7 years ago bought 5-wire systems from us. And then we ran some other short-term thing to hold them over, and then we added a ClickShare or other wireless device to kind of hold them over. And they're wondering why we're having to forklift $1 million worth of audiovisual equipment and infrastructure. Well, in that same time period, they've gone through 2 laptop refreshes, and they may be on their 3rd phone refresh. And we are now talking about looking at financing or capitalizing audiovisual in the same manner that they do those other devices that they know that they're going to change every 3, 4, or 5 years. They used to buy AV and lease laptops. Why don't they lease AV? And then when the payments are up in 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years, they will automatically change that out for something that is current technology. And
No, go ahead.
That's it.
Here's the thing, that it's brilliant. To
thank you. Don't tell anybody.
I won't.
Don't tell any of my competitors.
I won't. None of them listen to this podcast. How do you do that? How do you change their thinking? How do you change? I'm going back to my years as a tech manager. I could have never had that conversation with the CTO of the college I worked for. They would have looked at me like I had 3 heads.
We are doing that right now. 2 installations, more than $3 million in size, from 5 years ago, exactly 5 years ago. we are doing complete, and they're phrasing it as optimizations, system optimizations. They don't, their students don't have the same laptops. Their students don't have the same phones. We're carrying different signals, and they're not, and they're barely getting by with the signal types that we have now. And they don't have wireless capabilities. They don't, because Phil, we do like wireless.
There's some wireless, you know.
There's a lot of good wireless.
There's a lot of good wireless. There's some really cruddy wireless, but I still remember my first one. It was $1,000 and it did VGA, and it only went like 50 feet. It was ridiculous. All right, let's move on here. One last story here, actually two last stories, but we'll save the other one for last. Commercial Integrator has an interesting merger and acquisition forecast, and the headline kind of says it all, and this is exactly the question I'm going to ask you guys. Why industry consolidation won't slow down in 2017. Mr. Grimes, I'm going to start with you on this one. Not for nothing, but again, you used to cover the industry as well as being a part of association. First question is do you think they're right? Do you think that M&A isn't going to slow down in 2017 as far as the AV industry?
I don't know if it'll slow down or speed up. I think it'll continue to be a healthy part of the industry, like it's a healthy part of every other industry, like Burger King buying up Popeyes. I mean, their mergers and acquisitions happen in business, and the fact that sometimes there are private equity firms that look into the AV industry and see healthy companies with a lot of upside, and they decide to buy them up. That's a good sign. That's a sign of a healthy. I mean, obviously there are a lot of small companies in our industry, and there are a lot of big companies that are looking to grow in different ways. So I don't know what the pace will be, but I fully expect mergers and acquisitions to be an important part of the industry going forward.
You kind of alluded to this. So it may be a redundant question, but is that a good thing? The continuation of these mergers and acquisitions, is that a good thing for the industry? Is it a sign? Because it sounds to me like a indication of a growing and healthy industry.
We know that it's a growing and healthy industry. I mean, we've got the research that says this industry continues to grow faster than other segments of the larger economy. It just does. I mean, I think we experience it every day, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have the same economic ebbs and flows of any that any other industry has. I mean, for people, when there's a merger that unfortunately get downsized, there are things that are bad about mergers and acquisitions. But big picture, the industry continues to grow, and that's a good thing. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, again, people whose job it is to make money into more money look at AV companies and see opportunities to do that.
All right, Mr. McGinnis, your standpoint, not for nothing, but North America in general is a big part of the AV industry. And do you see mergers and acquisitions kind of staying on the same pace, or maybe even speeding up a little bit this year?
There are a number of drivers, Tim, to the M&A, and actually the author of the article in Commercial Integrator is an investment banker, and I thought did an outstanding job of informing the rest of us about some of the technical details of it. But in the end, I think it comes down to really just a few points. One is that we have a lot of owner-operator businesses, and those owners are reaching retirement age, and they are looking for exit strategies, and the exit strategies are going to come through a merger or an acquisition by another firm much more often than they are from employees or from a random buyer down the street. The second is that we have a business environment where there are a lot of mergers and acquisitions in the larger world. Kraft trying to buy Unilever for $134 billion. Our clients are becoming larger and larger and larger. And so in order to service larger and larger companies, we need to be larger and larger enterprises. And I look at what Diversified has done. I look at what AVI SPL has done. and I say, wow, these people are positioning themselves to be able to provide, global level service to global level companies that have 20 or 30 or 40,000 employees. Because if we don't do it in our industry, some other industry is going to take over that service. And I think, Brad, this is something that InfoComm has spoken about, is that we need to become that, enormous. The third reason, though, is the one that I think is driving more of this than anything else. We as an industry don't generate enough capital to be good prospects for a bank to lend money to. I don't think that those companies that I mentioned could go to a bank and ask them for enough money to grow in working capital and credit facilities to grow at the pace that they want to grow. They need outside investment in order to be able to do that. The second page of the article lists the venture capitalists or vulture capitalists or private equity people that have in fact taken over our industry. Verix is owned by 3 Crowns, I think it is. AVI SPL, the largest company in our industry, is owned by a private banking company. They're going to pump them up and sell them off, or they're going to drain every last penny. But what I do know is that anybody that gets involved with private equity has a piper to pay, and they have that piper to pay every Friday. That's not necessarily, it's like VIG to the loan shark on the corner. That's not necessarily a really good thing for the industry, because it puts pressure on cash flow stuff. It's all about cash flow rather than quality this or profitable that. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a good thing. We went through in the 80s a whole lot of mergers and acquisitions in the greater business community. Half of those companies thrived to swallow others, and the other half completely went away because their R&D money was taken away, their pension funds were stripped. It's a real it's a two-edged sword, Tim. Yeah. I'm sure Phil has something to say.
Well, Phil, on that note, from your perspective, what do you say? And not just, and Brock mentioned a number of integration firms. There's also, from the other side, the manufacturing side. The one that caught a lot of people by surprise, and it did me too, was the Samsung and Harman deal. Now, in retrospect and looking at the details, makes complete sense from a Samsung point of view. But you've got the integration side that's becoming, like Brock said, captured by a lot of venture capitalists. But also from the manufacturing side, you've got larger firms getting larger. That may be the quietest I've ever heard Phil. No, sir. I'm not going to be mean and say that's the smartest I've ever heard Phil.
What about now?
There we go.
Is that better? All right. Well, firstly, I would say, Brock, stop reading my diary, man. We, M3, the company that I'm partial owner in, we actually just completed our first acquisition at the beginning of this year. And it was for many of the reasons that Brock listed, And we've been growing steadily through organic growth for many years. And we're kind of looking for an opportunity to grow through inorganic growth and pick up a competitor who we weren't directly competing with on a daily basis, but that had a couple key customers in other markets that we weren't really even playing in. And it just made perfect sense, and it's been a really great time. Honestly, the past few months, it's been my primary task, one of them, to help merge the technical staffs, all the PMs, the programmers, building that corporate culture, making sure we're all on the same page. And yeah, I mean, a lot of the reasons that have already been named are the reasons that we went for that. It just seemed to make a lot of sense. And so far, it's been great for all of us. I know, ebbs and flows, as were mentioned as well. Here in Nashville, we had, as I was kind of growing up and my family worked in the AV industry, and I heard about, CMS, and then MCSI purchased, which was a larger conglomerate that ended up in kind of an Enron type situation. And then people ended up getting, after they went belly up, they got their stock options and got checks for 84 cents or something, after working with them for years and years and years. So it's just interesting to kind of see the ebbs and flows. And after that, it broke apart, and we ended up with a number of smaller integration firms that were started by, a lot of the guys that used to work together, and now some of them are forming back up over time. And it's, it just makes sense, man. In terms of the markets that we can go after, I mean, it just increases our capacity and our knowledge base, and it seems to make a lot of sense. So yeah, I understand why it's happening. It's working well for us, and I think it's a pretty cool time to be a part of not just our industry, but these tangential industries that seem to pair up pretty well with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, if I could just, this is going to be a little inside baseball thing on the InfoComm. I mean, the reason, we've spoken recently about a new, 3-year strategic plan that the board handed down. And one of the things that we're really trying to focus in is growing the market. And I want to distinguish that briefly from growing the industry, which is people like ourselves and AV companies who, that's what InfoComm has been doing for 75 years, is growing a bunch of great AV professionals to do this work. Now we want to focus on growing the market. Basically what we're saying is we're going to try to grow the pie that everyone's trying to compete for and make the market for these solutions as big as possible. Then whatever happens in the industry, if M&A leads to certain companies struggling or certain companies, the pie will still remain big and getting bigger, and then we fully expect to see smaller new companies with fresh ideas and different to come in and continue to feast at that pie. So again, M&A, I think that's a part of any healthy industry. It's great in some corners and it's challenged in other corners. But again, as long as we as an industry and as InfoComm grow the market for what all these folks do, then I think that there will always be opportunities for even new companies, combined companies, other innovative companies to come and do great work.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, man. There's a couple of folks that I've been talking with that are looking at not starting their own integration firm, but like Phil did, getting into other verticals that maybe they don't currently service. So, all right, last story here. It's no secret that we like going to InfoComm. We get to hang out on the show floor and see all you folks and see these three fine gentlemen every single year. It's at least one time a year we get to see them. So registration is open. The actual show is the 14th through the 16th is when the show floor is open. But just like every other InfoComm, education starts on the 10th, so 4 days before. Brad, if somebody's interested in going, how do they do so? How do they register?
What? Show registration's open? Yeah.
Show registration, 2 weeks ago, dude.
We're obviously very excited.
Does that mean all the hotels are gone?
Yes, actually. You can bunk with me in my Airbnb.
That's right. No, we're excited. It's going to be a great show. We're doing a few different things. You alluded to the park that's going to be actually on the show floor because you remember the food trucks last year that were very popular.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
too popular.
It's trickier to do food trucks.
You know what? They had a lobster roll that was to die for.
Yeah, there was some good stuff. Anyway, this time we're simulating food trucks. We can't actually drive the food trucks onto the show floor, but then again, we can't have the food trucks where they used to be either. So, but there will be that kind of thing. But there's InfoCommShow.org. Yeah, registration is open. It's going to be a great week. I'm sure that we'll see Brock and Phil there, and Tim and everybody else.
One thing I want to point out is talking with another media friend this week, and the other thing that you guys are doing. One of the things you're doing this year is you're having, I'm going to say they're TED talk, they're TED-like talks, short 10, 20-minute education sessions from folks in the industry and actually folks from outside the industry. That's kind of cool, and that's actually on the show floor as well. So yeah,
that's on a place we're calling Center Stage. In general, if anything's going to be different about the show, and there are always things that are different about the show. I mean, we are trying to go for some more content that is very solutions based, very case study based, but very thought leadership based. Sort of find creative solutions to our customers' problems. So there's a conference called Tide the day right before. Got the guy who wrote Toy Story, or one of the Pixar writers, Matthew Line, will be there, the center stage. So hopefully there'll be fresh content that people will really engage in and get something out of.
All right, I'll see you.
Speaking of fresh content at InfoComm, if you happen to be available Wednesday, June 14th, 8 to 10, check out my class. I'm teaching the class this year. How's great is that?
All right.
That's right. Solving the streaming problem inside and out.
There we go.
Very nice.
I don't know much about it, but it's IS020. Register now. Yeah.
See, there you go. Brock, are you teaching a class, or just gonna hang out with me?
I am not teaching a class.
No, I'm not either. So they kicked me out. I think they banned me from teaching after last year.
We're gonna keep you busy in different ways.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to rap about AV this year?
We will definitely. One of the things that we partner with Phil last 3 or 4 years. Phil does a very nice song for us, AVNation, and we do the AV selfie video. Phil is the soundtrack to that very video. So yeah, we'll be talking to him after next couple months or so. So yeah.
I'll have another original tune about racks coming out in a video.
Very nice.
Out in preparation to get people warmed up, excited about InfoComm. Pretty.
Racks is an O's.
Racks, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. On that note, we're gonna let you all go. Brad, we'll give you the first one here. How do people get a hold of you?
Well, you can always find InfoComm at infocom.org and infocommshow.org. Follow us on Twitter at InfoComm. I tweet periodically at bgrimesdc, which is where I sort of live.
You live on Twitter, or you live in
DC?
Okay, there you go. All right, Mr. McGinnis, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure to.
Yes, sir. How do people find you and or Westbury National?
We are at westbury.com, and I love interacting with AV Tweeps. I am at Brock McGinnis, and you'll find me there often.
Yes. I'm a much more prolific Twitterer than I probably ever will be. So, and last but not least, Mr. Phil Gordell, thank you, sir.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me. You can find me on Twitter at _AV_pro. You can find my fun AV videos on youtube.com/high fidelity, HIPHIDELITY. So check them out. A lot of fun. And looking forward to seeing all you guys at InfoComm this year for sure. IRL.
IRL. If you're not a hip kid, that means in real life. So, all right. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me on the Twitters. Like I said, Brock tweets more than I ever will. But go by the website, AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. AVNation has a different model for advertising. We call it underwriting. So check out our underwriters. They're the folks that help make this possible. Actually, InfoComm is one of those fine folks. So we thank them. Also, stay tuned. I spent a couple of days this week with an organization called PSNI and did a couple really cool sessions, and we're turning them into podcasts. One specifically that I want you guys to pay attention to was about network security. And with one of the women that was on there was a woman by the name of Teresa Payton. Teresa was the first chief network security officer for the White House. Lots of interesting things, a little bit scary, but very good information nonetheless. So that all will be at the website, avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.